And we're with Andrea Hall here live on the Get Foxy show. Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Well, I'm just so thrilled that one of my guests is actually just a few miles down the road from me. It's pretty cool. But you
Yeah.
work a lot with horses and with people, and I'm curious how your profession sort of showed up in your life. Have you always worked with horses? Have you always worked with people? I know you're one heck of a criminal defense attorney as well. So tell us a little bit about how that all blended together.
Sure. So I have been a criminal defense attorney for the last 13 plus years. And about 7 years ago, I was in the middle of a 5-day jury trial, and my puppy had been ill, and she passed away the morning of closing arguments. And it was pretty devastating because she was only 18 months old. And so it was a struggle the whole time I was in trial, as well as it was the first time I really got to experience how unsympathetic the criminal justice system is, and how my clients actually probably have felt throughout the process of being in the criminal justice system. So I took some time away from my career and said, you know what, I just need a break and to reevaluate where I am in my life. And at that point in time, after I stepped away for the summer, I came back and I said, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. And it was the first time I really didn't have a clue where I was going or what I was going to do next. Excuse me. I had always known when I graduated from high school where I was going to go to college, what degree I was going to get, and that I was going to go to law school and all of that. And so it was the first time that I really was out in the middle of the ocean floundering. And so I began at that point in time to search and figure out where I was going to go and what I was basically going to do when I grew up. And I started physically getting ill. And I went through this process over the next 3 years of attempting to figure out what was physically the matter with me. And about the same time as I was figuring out what was physically the matter with me, I started discovering my love for horses again, and how I could potentially combine my coaching abilities as well as my ability to help people just in a different fashion and combine that with horses. And so I had discovered Melisa Horse's Touched by a Horse program, and I started the certification process. And I was about 6 months into the process when they found out I had the brain tumor and had to have emergency brain surgery. And it was at that point that it was like the 2x4 upside the head. Because at that point in time, I knew I was probably going to leave my practice. However, it was not solidified. And once they told me I had the brain tumor, and I didn't know whether it was going to be cancer, and I was going to have to potentially make the decision, do I do chemo and radiation? Do I do holistic medicine, or how do I proceed with this? That I said, okay, I got the message loud and clear, I'm physically killing myself in this profession and I have to get out. So it was at that point that I said, no matter what happens, I'm done, and I'm going to leave this career. And I received a Christmas miracle. It wasn't cancer. And I'm now at the process where I'm actually, closing my law practice and jumping off the cliff to do this full time.
Wow. That's a big, I'm actually getting a little bit of feedback from your speakers. I can hear that just a little bit. So if there's an echo, that's what that is.
Oh, okay. I don't hear anything on my end, so okay. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. Where was I going with that? This that's a big story. That is a huge life change. And
oh yeah.
You said that you'd kind of gone back to realizing that you wanted to work with horses. Did you have experience with horses growing up?
So I grew up in what was called the city, if you will. I grew up in North Dakota in a small town of about 35,000 people. However, my mom came from a background of farmers and people that had horses and things of that nature. So whenever we got the opportunity and we went there, I was always drawn to the horses. And I always had this attraction and wanting to be with them, and I never could really figure out what it was, because obviously I was not raised with them, yet I was always drawn to them and always wanted to be with them. And when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was actually in a really bad horse riding accident. I had gotten on a friend's horse because I wanted to go riding, and now knowing what I know now, I see how I created that based on the energy and space I was in. So I got on the back of the horse, and the horse wasn't listening to me because of where I was energetically. And we went about halfway down the fence line, and he whipped around on me and ripped the reins out of my hands and took off running. Well, not being an experienced enough rider, counterintuitively, the first thing you do is to hold on, right? So you squeeze your legs. Well, that's the cue for the horse to indicate go faster. So of course he was going faster and faster. And finally I could not hold on any longer. And I ended up getting dumped. And when I got dumped, of course, I landed in a seated position. And when I landed, I flipped about 4 times. I busted my pelvis in half and shattered my arm, and spent about 6 months in a wheelchair and had 3 operations. And so it took me a long time after that to be comfortable around horses again. However, when I moved to Colorado after I graduated from law school, I once again had that yearning to be with them. So I started taking horse riding lessons and was just always wanting to be with them. And I had the opportunity to do some horse work, similar to what I'm doing now, while I was in that soul searching place for 3 years. And once I did that, I was really drawn to that type of work and said, this is, I think, really what I want to do. And so that's when I started searching out the different modalities that were available with horses and coaching and things of that nature. And I ultimately fell on Melisa's program and just really fell in love with her personality-wise, as well as where she came mentally. She really came from a place of abundance and was going to give you a turnkey business, really made sure that your work was done. You weren't just going to some weekend or week-long event and then handed a certificate and said, hey, go out and work with horses and people. I took 2 years and went through her whole program, and in fact I'm doing her advanced program starting in January, which is another 2-year program. So I will be starting that and deepening my knowledge around Gestalt.
This is very fascinating to me. I grew up on a cattle ranch in northern Wyoming, so I've got a little bit of familiarity with some horses, but I'm curious, and I think my listeners would be curious. We talk a lot about holistic health and natural beauty and passionate living here on the Get Foxy show, and you talk a little bit about being in an energetic space around the horse and the horse reacting to that. What is it about horses and energy that create a therapeutic relationship?
Sure. So first of all, horses have 4 feet that are on the ground. They don't have shoes. They're automatically connected to Mother Earth vibrationally. The other thing is that horses live in the moment. They're not monitored or guided by cell phones and Palm Pilots and calendars and things of that nature. Like, there is no judgment or attachment. They're constantly in the moment and listening and feeling to what's going on because they're a prey animal. So they constantly have to be aware of what's going on around them. Where us as human beings typically are not aware of what's going on around us. In fact, if we didn't have a heart that beat it automatically and our lungs actually took in oxygen, you'd see people falling all over and probably dying because, they're not in the moment. They're so attached to a calendar and a cell phone and email and things of that nature that they forget to do the things that our body automatically does consciously or subconsciously, excuse me. So the horses are attracted to what somebody is actually speaking when somebody is actually speaking their truth. So I'll give you two versions, pretty dumbed down and easy to explain. So as you can see, I have on a light blue, pale blue shirt. If I was in the round pen and I was asked, what color is my shirt? And I said, it's red, that would not be my truth. And everything has a vibration to it, right? So if I said my shirt is red, that would not be my truth and that would not be in alignment. And therefore the horses would not be drawn to that because it wasn't in alignment and I wasn't speaking my truth. However, if I had said my shirt is light blue, that would be something energetically that would be my truth and they'd want to join up with that. So they're the best lie detectors ever. Another example is, let's say I'm working with couples, and that's one of the areas that I focus on is couples work. If I have a couple, one of them, the female, the male, doesn't matter who it is in the round pen, and I say, tell me about your relationship. And they're either still in denial or they really do believe consciously that there is not a problem with their relationship, even though subconsciously they may believe that. They may go on and say their relationship's great, it's wonderful, and the horse is not buying any of that, right? And so I instantly know whether what is coming out of their mouth is the truth or not, whether I know this person or not, because I'm watching my horse and my horse would want to join up with them if in fact that was their truth. And so my immediate response is, what's going on for you and what do you feel is happening with the horse? What is the horse telling you at this point in time? And so when we would just kind of go through that process and start to figure out what the horse is actually telling them and showing them for that matter and work through that.
Now you've got me curious a little bit. I'd be thinking you could take some of your criminal defense clients and put them with a horse. I don't know if you've done that or not.
No. However, the hugest difference between what I do as a criminal defense attorney and what we do with the horses is, in my world as a criminal defense attorney, I don't have to decide guilt or innocence. That's not my job. That's the jury's job. So if a client comes in, I typically don't ever have the conversation of saying to them, did you do this or did you not do this? Because that's irrelevant to me. I have worked with clients who are accused of sex offenses and domestic violence. That's pretty much been my niche for the last 13 years. And so when they come in and I say, these are the charges, I never say, did you commit the offense? Because it doesn't matter to me whether they did or not. My job is to make sure that the police and the prosecution did their job and that the Constitution's upheld and that they can actually prove the elements that are needed to be proved. Now, do I have clients all the time that tell me, hey, I did not do this? Sure. Do I have clients that choose to remain silent and choose not to tell me? Absolutely. Do I have clients that I believe are absolutely guilty of it? Absolutely. However, again, that's not my job and not where I go with the case. Where when I work with the horses, I'm absolutely looking for that because we're in the process of wanting to heal the unfinished business that they have going on. And that's the biggest difference between what I do and what a typical talk therapist does. A typical talk therapist has you come in, you sit on the couch and you talk and you gain awareness and knowledge. They may or may not give you homework. However, what I do with the horses is transformational and life-changing because you're having an experience and you're changing the neural pathways in the brain. So therefore, there's an experience that happens and you can now respond instead of reacting to what's going on in the outside world, where when you go to talk therapy, then you typically go home and you have to see how it pans out in the real world. My horses tell you if it's going to work right away. There's no question. So like I said, what we do with the horses is really transformational. And the horses are just as much of the process as I am. They are feeding me just as much information so that I can ask the proper questions and we can process the procedure and figure out what is actually the root of the problem and ultimately needs to be healed.
Wow. That is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's really juicy when you get to watch it.
I can't even imagine. I'm extremely curious now.
Well, now you'll have to come out and do a session.
You bet. Andrea, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask all my guests, and it is, what does Foxy and being Foxy mean to you?
Oh gosh, I think Foxy to me is really just something that's an interpersonal thing. And that may be for me just feeling good. And it doesn't have to be anything that is relative to anyone else. You know, I could feel Foxy sitting in my pajamas on the couch just because I'm sitting with my husband and we're snuggling. So I think it's all a interpersonal thing, and what warms your heart and gives you passion. So yeah, I could name lots of things that are Foxy for me.
And how does the work that you do bring out the foxiness in your clients?
Well, I can definitely tell you that at an end of an hour and a half session, most clients are about 150 pounds lighter and have had a facelift in that hour and a half session. They look completely different when they leave after they've been with me and the horses. It's definitely a weight that's been lifted off their shoulders. They're definitely more energized. They're happy. They're joyous. Just because they've been able to release whatever it is that's going on in that moment that's holding them back from their wishes, their desires, and hopes and dreams, and they've left it on the floor at the barn.
I can so relate to what you've just said. As an aesthetic and facial acupuncturist, one of the things that I talk to my clients about is the connection between our emotions and the lines written on our faces. And it's not just the lines, but the way that we hold our faces. And these emotions engage specific muscle groups. I mean, we can't help it. It's a subconscious thing that we do. So I can it just makes total sense to me, and I can see it in my mind that when you have somebody working with those horses and they go through that release and that transformation, of course they're going to look different.
Yeah.
And I'll bet they're just brighter and lighter and their faces are just radiant.
Yes.
And yeah.
Huge difference.
Yeah. I'm curious now, would you be able to share a story about one of the most outstanding transformations that you've seen through your work?
I don't know that one stands out more than another. They're all special and unique in their own way. Just one that I know was very moving for a lady that came to one of my groups. I have a meetup group now that it's getting colder and we actually moved to the Eaton area. It's kind of been put on hold. However, it'll be starting again in the spring, and that's our weekly meetup group. And she came, and it just so happened that week she was the only one that happened to show up. I had other people registered, however, for some reason, and I never doubt what happens in the universe. There was a reason she was the only one that was supposed to be there. And when she came, she was resistant because she knew she was going to have to be the one that was in the hot seat, if you will. And so she was like, we can cancel. I can come back another day. And I was like, nope, everything's set up. You're here. Let's go. I said, you're just basically going to get a private session. And I said, let's see where it goes. And so we started the process, and she had unexpectedly lost her husband several weeks before that. And they had just finally started to get into a good place again in their relationship. And so we worked through some stuff, and she said to me, I suppose this is a horse you use every week. And I said, actually, no. I said, I normally use my horse Justice. However, I said, somebody's been feeding Justice treats. I said, and so now he's not been wanting to do the work. He's been looking for treats while he's in the round pen. And I'm going to, have him on hiatus for a little while. So I said, I happened to grab a different horse. I said, this isn't a horse I normally use. And she said, what's the horse's name? And I said, the horse's name is Joy. And she just immediately started crying. And I said, what is coming up for you? And she said, I've been praying for Joy for the last 2 weeks. And I said, well, she just happened to show up and she's about 12 to 1,500 pounds and has 4 legs. I said, so there you go. Your prayers have been answered. So that is just, one of many experiences that, people have in the round pen, and we continue to go in the round pen and do some more work. And like I said, she literally had a facelift and was 150 pounds lighter after she left.
Wow. It's so amazing. These what one of my teachers would call a synchronicity.
Mm-hmm. There are no coincidences.
Well, coincidence if you want, but yeah, I'm a big believer that things in life show up when you need them to show up.
That's right. When the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
Amen to that. Well, I'll bet you have a great time with your clients. You probably, go through the whole gamut of emotions with your clients. I mean, laughter, sadness, grief. I'll bet you see it all through that process. Yes,
there's many emotions that come up, and a lot of times there's several layers to what needs to be worked on, and the example of that is potentially somebody who's been sexually assaulted. We're never the same person we were yesterday or the day before that, and so we're constantly evolving and changing. And so when you do a piece of work, you've peeled that layer of the onion back, if you will, and therefore the next time other things may show up around that. So the first time you may do a piece around the sex assault, it's maybe just telling your story, right, for the very first time. Maybe you've never even told the story to anybody, so it's just telling the story. The next time it may be, having a conversation with the perpetrator. The next time it may be a piece around anger and how did this happen to me, and why did God let that happen to me, and how come my parents didn't protect me? And maybe a conversation with a parent who you told that didn't believe you. There are so many layers to that you have to work through all of that. So sometimes it's not just one piece that has to be dealt with around a specific issue. There may be several levels to that. And the other thing that people need to be aware of is, even though you've healed that piece, it still may show up in another way that you need to heal that as well. And, you also have to realize that you may have had several years of that thought process. So an example for me is, I remember my teacher who told me I was no good at math. And that's one of the biggest reasons I went to law school versus med school, is because I knew that I was going to have to do math in med school, and I was scared to death of math. I knew I wasn't good at math. Anytime, even now, somebody mentions math, I just oh my God, I freak out because I just know I'm not good at math. I remember in 2nd and 3rd grade standing next to my chair and then them throwing up flashcards, and I just couldn't think fast enough, and then you sit down because you didn't get to move to the next chair. And then, it was just this awful feeling. And so I've had, how many years of conditioning and gathering information that I'm no good at math. And so to release that, I really have to consciously go, yes, I can do math. Yes, I'm okay at that, right? So we all have trauma in our life. It's a matter of how little or how big it is, and how it ultimately affects your life in what it is that you say you want, and whether or not you have to deal with that ultimately and release it.
And the horses help with the release work because you are including them in the conversation. Is that kind of how that works?
Well, horses are healing in and of itself just to be with them. Like I can go out to my pasture and think I'm fine and just walk up into the presence of my horses. In fact, this happened after I got married. I've been married a little over a year now. And prior to the marriage, I was, busy and grinding it all out and making sure everything was in place. And, they always tell you, enjoy it because it goes so fast. And the day was over and I went, oh my gosh, I should have enjoyed it a little more. The whole day went by so fast. And afterwards, I went out to the horses because I hadn't been able to be with the horses. And I remember just walking out to the pasture and I immediately started bawling, like for no reason. I wasn't sad about anything. However, it was just a cathartic release. And just being in their presence brought that up for me. And it happens quite often where I think there's nothing going on. I'm not in a sad place. And I can just go out to the pasture and be around one or two of my horses and emotions just start coming up that I'm like, where is this coming from? What's this associated with? And, I do my own work out there with the horses. So they bring an emotion and awareness that wouldn't normally occur just by being in their presence without doing anything or me asking any questions.
I'm guessing you probably find a lot of deeper stuff coming up in not just, release of sadness or grief, but I'm guessing also joy.
Oh yeah, any number of emotions can come up, and it's not always around sadness. Absolutely not. And typically, if there is sadness or anger, there's also the other emotion on the opposite side. You're not able to have joy without sadness and sadness without joy. There's the yin and the yang, right? So yeah, there's different levels and different awarenesses and different emotions that come up. Like I said, we go through a lot in an hour and a half.
I'm sitting here thinking, wow, that's big stuff.
Yeah.
To be able to do that kind of processing in really that short amount of time, this is very powerful stuff that you're doing here.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, God bless you for doing that work.
It's really enjoyable for me. The biggest piece that I enjoy the most is when the client really has that aha moment and figures out what it is that's been holding them back or what's been keeping them from what it is that they say they want. The big breakthrough, because where there's a big breakthrough and a breakdown, there's that big breakthrough. So for me, that's the best part of my job, is when the client finally gets it and they go, oh my gosh, I had no clue. I had no clue this was what was keeping me from what it is that I truly want in my life. So that's the best reward for me.
How can folks learn more about you and your work, Andrea?
Sure, they can go to my website at www.withers, and that's WITHERS whisper.com. All my contacts on there, and they can schedule a free 30-minute exploratory session to see if there's a way that I can help them. We have coaching packages. I have meetup groups. I have retreats. I have couples workshops. They can look at any of the number of things that we do and see how we could move forward.
And this is something you and I are kind of in the same local area, but are you working just primarily with folks from Northern Colorado, or do you work with folks from all over?
No, I can coach with anybody throughout the United States or the world. They don't necessarily have to come and do the horse work. I think the horse work is beneficial. Obviously, somebody that lives here in Colorado has easier access to come and do the horse work. However, if somebody lives afar, then I would tell them that they need to schedule like a weekend to come and do an intensive with me and still coach. However, you know, you don't necessarily need to do the horse work to do a coaching package with me. Do I encourage that? Absolutely, because that's the emotional piece that is sometimes holding people back from their hopes and their dreams. It's nice to have a coach, and I firmly believe in a coach. I have a coach at all times, and I think they hold people accountable and help them see what's holding them back and get themselves out of their own way. However, the horse piece is not necessarily a piece that has to be done. It can be done at any given time.
That's really good to know. What's one piece of advice that you would have for our listeners today about how to stay foxy?
Really to focus on your inner self, and find time to take care of your inner self. Because if you are not filled up, there's no way that you can give to anyone else. You're depleted. And so many times, especially women, we don't take care of ourselves, whether that's, you know, getting a massage or meditating or journaling or going to get a pedicure, having a glass of wine with your friends or a glass of wine in a bubble bath. We ourselves have to be filled up or there's nothing to give, and women typically deplete themselves. So I would definitely make time for yourself at least once a week. Like I said, even if that's a candlelight bubble bath or you shut the door, turn some music on, getting up in the morning 10 minutes before everybody else and jam into your favorite tunes, something to get you going and to stay connected with your body and your inner self.
There you go, ladies. You heard it right there from Andrea. Take time for yourself. This is definitely a theme that has repeated itself throughout the, where am I at now? I think we're at 40 plus episodes of the Get Foxy show. And again, this is important to take time for you. And Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thank you for having me,
Irons in the fire, so thank you so much. We certainly appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.